this might work. What are we talking about today? So hold on. Just give him a quick. Before we go live.
Well, we're getting ready.
We are live. So, okay, ready in 3, 2.
Hey everybody, it's John at Ubaldi Reports, and I'm with Joe Bitts, our combat Marine who was wounded in Iraq today. It's Ubaldi Reports. Like always, we provide fact, not fiction, talking about issues that impacting America, whether globally or domestically. And today we're going to do something different. We're going to talk about change in America, how the voting patterns of America are starting to shift. And every so many generations, there is a realignment. The first one was in 1824 with the election of President Andrew Jackson, because the vast majority of the American public was tired of the elite establishment from the founding fathers, because the first number of presidents all came from Virginia or Massachusetts.
Okay, so let's let's fast forward in here a little bit, because we were talking a little bit offline, like we always do.
Yeah,
we always say the good stuff when we're not doing a podcast.
Okay.
But you were saying how the news, I'm pretty sure it was coming from CNN or maybe MSNBC, saying how Biden's going to sweep.
No, that was an article I read. Okay. It was a Republican political operative who worked with Reagan. He worked with Bush Jr. He worked with Mitt Romney and a couple other Republicans. He said that Joe Biden.
Mitt Romney is not a Republican.
Okay,
but
but Joe Biden is down in the polls, but things are going to crater for Trump. He likened it to a bag of water that's fine now, but it's going to pop, and when it does, it goes all over the place. The thing that I'm saying that I think he's going to be wrong this time is too many people aren't feeling this economy. Now, Barron's, which is an economic report, came out over the weekend stating that the economy is booming, but only for a few. If you look at most of Americans, and I talk to most of them, and I'm in that realm, most Americans are paying higher rent, higher utilities, higher food costs, higher gas prices, higher insurance, mortgage rates that are all-time high, higher than they've been in the last decade or so. Mm-hmm. So when people say this, I always go back to, what do you do? Are you part of it? Are you feeling the effects of what average Americans are feeling?
So I want to go back to the whole, the 1980 sweep. That's when Reagan kind of came through.
Reagan, Democrats.
So let's just hypothetically, or let's just kind of theorize something, okay?
Okay.
Say there is maybe a not so trustworthy election system. And basically the easiest way to do it would be to kind of just flop the votes, okay? So you just flip a switch, the votes flop so that the person you want to win gets the majority of the votes, even if it's the other person. So let's just kind of go back to 2016 and, everybody, it was almost like, and you knew this too, you were hearing this, that Hillary Clinton was a shoo-in. She was going to do it. There was so much support behind her. And let's just say they didn't flip that switch at that time, and that's how Trump won. Okay?
Okay.
Now, let's fast forward to 2020 for a second. Let's go to 2020, and they flipped the switch. So maybe the majority of the votes, with a little bit of interference here or there, Trump loses, Biden wins. How does this old man get this job? We're all up in uproar. We're calling election, interference, blah, blah, blah. All right. Now, let's just go back, or let's go up to 2024. Okay. Now, Biden's poll numbers are so down. They're just ridiculously low. There's no way this guy's supposed to pull it out. But if they flip that switch, it's going to be Biden by a landslide when it should actually be Trump.
Here's the thing that I said.
And this is all theory.
Okay, it is theory, but here's the thing that I've said, that this is change in America. Like I said, every so many generations, there's a realignment of the political parties. Case in point, because I'm 59, will be 60 at the end of the year. When I was growing up, the Republican parties were the parties of corporate America. They were the country club, and white, educated Americans typically were Republicans. The working class typically were Democrat, because the Democrats were always the party of the working class. Over the last, not just with Trump, but over the last so many decades, it's starting to change. And then you look at some of the ethnic groups. African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans typically vote Democrat. If I take the African American vote, they usually, I think they went for 2020, they went 88% for Joe Biden.
Yeah, the African American vote this year is going to devastate.
Okay, but let's just stick with that group.
Okay.
88% voted for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Latest polls have African American support, especially African American males, considerably down. So now he's probably got support about maybe 55 to 60% of the African American community.
Okay.
That's a drop about over 30%.
What do you think is going to happen during the summer? Because you also we were also talking about that, like, you know, they're like, in a sense, or idealistically, I guess would be a good. Biden's not doing as bad now as he could be doing in the summer because of gas prices.
Okay, but here's the point. Everything that Joe Biden talks about, the Inflation Reduction Act, the American Rescue Plan, the CHIPS Act, the infrastructure deal, that didn't help small business. That's 60% of the U.S. economy.
Yeah.
Then you look at who is being helped. Like right now, I was reading an article, he's doing more to forgive student loan debt. The Brookings, Joe Biden.
Okay.
The Brookings Institute said that forgiving student loan debt benefits the wealthy more so than middle-class Americans, because those are the ones typically who go to school.
Yeah.
But look who he's forgiven the student loans from. It's healthcare, it's nurses, it's the medical profession, but most importantly, it's also those who work in the public sector.
Yeah.
Those who work in government. These are loyal Democratic voters. This isn't helping middle-class Americans. So right now, if you're just stick for the white America, if you make under $100,000 and you didn't go to school, college primarily, you're going to be a Republican, because the issues that Biden is pushing is not helping you. You look at their communities of the middle class America. You look at the minority community. All these white, educated, liberal elites, progressive elites, push a defund the police. Who does that hurt? That hurts the minority community, like Chicago, Detroit, San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, Cincinnati, and the like. Then you look at 8 million illegal immigrants have poured into this country, and they go into these communities. And then and this is proven.
Okay, hold on. We're getting questions here. What Republican policies are helping them through? What
do you mean? Like what Republican?
Let's see. I guess her name's Alora something. Alora. Can you be more specific?
Well, the more specific is trade policy.
Okay.
Over the decades, this is where Republican establishment and Democrats pushed the trade deals, like with China. This gutted out the manufacturing base that sent American jobs to Mexico and to China. Remember, Ross Perot debated Al Gore in '94, talking about the Mexican free trade agreement that sent jobs to Mexico.
Yeah.
So middle-class Americans work in manufacturing. You look at college.
Okay.
So you look at some of these other issues like student loan debt. I go back to that. This was supposed to have been fixed in 2010 after they passed Obamacare. A writer went with it. But you're making middle-class Americans pay for it.
So I think I get it now. Allure. Okay, good. That's clever. What Republican policies help working class? Now, before you go into that, there's a lot of policies that are currently going on now that are pretty much wrecking the working class by, we're broke.
We are broke. Now, one of the things that help the working class Americans, I know I'll probably get slammed for this, but I can back this up.
It's Amy's. So,
okay.
Hey, Amy.
But the Trump tax cuts of 2017, I did a radio show, and the radio host was totally against he disagreed with me. This benefited the top. It didn't. The Bureau of Economic Analysis, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Congressional Budget Office, all stated 88% of that tax get benefited the lower income. And the IRS for 2023, I believe, came out and said that the top 5% of pay about 75 to 80% of the taxes in America.
So I want to say something too, especially because she's talking about the working class, is that I make six figures. Yeah, I make six figures. And I'm living paycheck to paycheck. But I'm also opening up a business, so I can understand a little bit by that too.
Well,
my next door neighbor is very adamant and proud to say this, that he is a very good lawyer. He works for a very noble law firm.
Okay.
And he lives paycheck to paycheck.
Well,
but again, he's also he's also putting money into his wife's business. So I could see, but it's still,
But see, for me, and everybody looks at their own life. I'm doing the same thing, living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to keep my head above water. You know my living conditions without going into great depth from here.
Do I?
Yeah, okay, but where the Republicans help the working class, they're trying to bring back manufacturing back to this country. Mm-hmm. That helps the middle class Americans. And one of the problems is it's not just cheap labor abroad. I talk to I talk to business owners all the time. And what I do is I sell firearms at a law enforcement supply company. But what I also do, I always ask questions. What do you do? What do you do? Because I like to get the gauge of people. And I talk to a lot of business owners who come in, and everybody says the same thing. Their top costs are labor costs.
Yeah.
Then you got the rent, utilities, insurance. And then if you got the regular public, food costs. Does everybody go to the grocery store? Are they paying less for food now than they did a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
So I think a good question for Amy is, give us an idea of what you do. Maybe throw in there, maybe your income level. We don't want to know exactly how much you make, but for you to kind of, tout about, working class. Let's see where you are, because you do a radio show. And the host is like, this is not big. This is not a big deal. Why? Because he's making a lot more money.
Well, he got an example. He got to go back in January. He and his son flew to Denver to go skiing for a week.
Okay.
How many people can do that? Now, for myself, I have a business.
I don't like snow.
And it cratered because of COVID, so I had to get a job. I worked at Chick-fil-A.
But we're building it back slowly,
but I worked at Chick-fil-A for 15 months.
Yeah.
Then I got this current job at this law enforcement supply company. And I'll be honest, I make $15 an hour.
And you're going to get another job.
Okay, I make less than $30,000 a year. Right now, because I'm in between living establishments, I live in the gun range that Joe and Ray and other investors are putting together. And I'll eventually work with to do the marketing at that. So I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. I know what it's like when you fill up your tank of gas and you got to limit yourself to where you can drive and visit, because that's taking gas out of your vehicle. I know what it's like when I have a vehicle. I have a Toyota Tacoma.
Yeah.
It's 2004. Got 217,000 miles. I'm lucky I work where I work, because the installers, some of them are mechanics. When I have problems with my vehicle, I get the part, I pay them a few dollars, and they put the part in, or they fix my truck.
So I think it would be a little bit intrusive for Amy, because there are a lot more questions I would have to ask her, because she did say she's a realtor. Well,
I would ask her too.
Retail manager, but now she is a caregiver for her parents.
This is Amy?
Okay, she's a 40-year-old single mom. Okay, I could never afford living independently. Okay, so you're living paycheck to paycheck basically too.
Now Amy said she lives paycheck to paycheck. She's a 40-year-old single mom.
Ooh, one last thing.
Okay, hold on.
Where does she live? That's one more thing.
Okay, that would be good. But then she takes care of her ailing parents.
Her wealthy elderly parents. Yes.
But even still, I took care of my parents. My mom died when I was in Iraq.
And they were not wealthy.
Okay, and they were not wealthy. But I took care of my dad. He lived by himself. We would come down, took care of him. And then at the later part of the time, we were spending a lot more time taking care of him. But the fact that it's not easy taking care of elderly parents. Now, I go back into her situation. She's a single mom taking care of a child. She's got a lot of things on her plate, plus working and doing all this and spending time with her son or daughter. So I would like to know what state she lives in, because that will determine, my parents lived...
Can we ask Amy if maybe her parents are Jill and Joe Biden?
But my parents lived in California. California is very expensive to live. That's one of the reasons I left. After my dad died, I was like, what am I staying here for? So I intimately know this. But what I said, meaning going back to the original question of why there's a change in America, the average, the middle class are not feeling it. The Democratic Party has changed from the party of the working class. If you look at the top 20 zip codes, the vast majority voted Democratic. The Democratic Party is now the party of corporate America, the tech elites, entertainment, and the poor. Because the poor get the benefits feasted upon them by Democrats. The wealthy get the benefits by the benefit of the stock market. But who's paying for all these illegals coming in? Now the Census Bureau reported that 60% or more of all illegal immigrants are getting some type of government assistance. But the middle class aren't eligible for some of those things.
Yeah.
So they are seeing their communities, their families struggling to meet ends meet. And then they look at, let's bail out all these students with student loan debt, but their kids can't go. And then you have, here's an example. California, Governor Newsom shut down the school systems where my brother's kids live. So 6 million California kids had to stay and learn by Zoom, but his kids got to go to a private school with in-person learning.
Let's chime in. Chaz Houston, I don't know if we talked to him before. Trump's tax cut for the 1% cost us how much?
I would have to go back and look, but the tax cut benefited the U.S. economy. I know that's not what everybody wants to hear, but I can go back to...
Yeah, because basically by them paying less taxes, they were to take that money, put it back into their employees, and employees had more money, been able to spend more money.
And then the average American, the middle class American, had more money to spend because inflation was low. Inflation was at 1.8 when he left office. Energy prices were much lower than they are now.
Is oil going to change that?
What's that?
Okay, Trump comes in, drill baby drill, us getting more. Is inflation going to go down because we're going to have more goods?
There's a lot of that goes into it.
I guess in all actuality, if there's more fuel or more energy at a lower cost, then they're able to get more products in or out of the U.S.
It's not necessarily, it's drill, baby, drill, I got that. But people need to understand, right now we're going from winter blend to summer blend. It takes longer to refine a summer blend than a winter blend. But the other problem is America can drill and produce as much energy as it wants. The problem is it's cheaper to refine foreign energy than domestic energy.
Okay, so real quick, Chaz comes in again, and then there's Amy, you're next. Didn't happen. Companies kept money and brought back stocks.
That's true. I'm not.
That is, but there was also there were some companies that were giving their money back to their employees.
I would agree with part of that. There are companies that bought back their stock options. I would agree with them on that statement. But it also benefited the economy. What we're facing now is borrowed money. Even Larry Summers, I just read an article about him. He was the former Clinton Treasury Secretary and senior economic advisor to Barack Obama, said it's too premature for the Fed to start cutting interest rates. But the biggest problem he's worrying about is the debt. We went just 6 months ago, the national debt was $33 trillion. 4 or 5 months later, we're now over $34 trillion. So a lot of this spending is borrowed money.
Okay. So there's a couple going on here. And I'll get to you in a minute, Brian. But we're drilling. So Amy says, but we're drilling more.
We're producing more.
We're producing more, but not drilling more.
We're producing and drilling more, but we're drilling in red states. But the problem is the energy that America produces, it's hard to refine in this country. That's why it's easier and cheaper to refine foreign energy. Our refineries haven't expanded. We haven't really built a new refinery in over 40, 50 years.
So we're drilling more, but we just don't have the we don't have the
refinery capabilities to refine American crude.
Let's see. Brian says Trump's tax cuts hurt me in a democratically ran state. Salt cap still voting Trump. Okay, good for you, buddy. What's up? Go for it.
No, what he said about salt.
Yeah.
Salt is state and local taxes.
Yeah.
At the end of 2025, starting January 26th, all the Trump tax cuts go away. So everybody, the marginal tax rate on everything goes up, except for the wealthy, they can deduct only up to $10,000. And January 1st, 2026, that goes away. So that means all those wealthy individuals who live in these high tax states now get to deduct all of that off their income tax, where before they couldn't, only up to $10,000.
So Amy comes back in. She says also inflation is now hovering back down around 3%.
Go ahead.
But what was the lowest under the Trump administration?
The lowest, it was never been above 2. I think when he left office is at 1.8.
Okay, and then what about Obama when he left?
Obama was in about the 2% range. It was very low for such a long time. It was low for 40 years.
Okay, so when Biden goes down to 2%, I think Amy's got a good argument.
She does, okay, but the other problem is the Fed looks at its preferred metric for inflation. They're looking at it at 7%, because a lot of times when the CPI comes out, the Consumer Price Index, they don't factor in energy and fuel. So, but the Fed is looking at that higher rate. That's their preferred metrics. That's why Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chairman, today stated, we're not going to change. We're going to keep interest rates where it's at right now.
Okay. Did Trump sell one of our refineries to Saudi Arabia?
I would have to look at that. I don't know.
We'll keep on going. Oh, thank you for your live. Hey, appreciate it, Chaz. Thank you. Wall Street is doing incredibly well. Retirement accounts look great, but cost of living is awful. I want to answer this one because
go ahead.
The stock market is always going to do well. The stock market is always going to be higher in a different, under a different presidency. It does nothing but go up. Like your best move would to be take $1 million, $10 million, $100 million, put it in the S&P 500, get your 10% yield every freaking year and live off that. So you're always going to do well in the major stock exchanges. It's just the rate of growth. So if it's taking us a while to get as high as we are now versus, say, under the Trump administration, that thing just shot right through the roof. So Trump was laying down the groundwork, and then in COVID, it took a hit.
It did.
And then but it's finally built back up, hit to where it was at its highest in the Trump administration, under a Biden administration, and it keeps on going up. The stock market is always going to constantly go up.
But you got to look at where the stock markets are going up. Corporate America is doing really well. That's what I said. Corporate America now supports Democrats. But small businesses, they're getting hit the hardest. They took a beating during COVID. This is the other thing going back to the change in America. Remember during the COVID, the economic lockdown, what stores were allowed to remain open? The corporate America, Target, Walmart, your grocery stores, obviously. Mm-hmm. But what businesses were told to shut down and remain shut down? Small businesses.
Yeah.
They can't absorb all this stuff. So this is what people are seeing. Then they look at education. Who goes to private school? Mainly the wealthy. Mm-hmm. And the poor, the middle class, you're told you must go to public school, but my kids get to go to private school. When they pushed this anti-police rhetoric after George Floyd, who did it impact? The minority community. When they allowed 8 million illegal immigrants to come into this country. Where did they go? And what resources, like in Chicago, African Americans were saying, well, wait a minute. You said there's no money. Now all of a sudden you found $55 million. You're giving them all these benefits that we're not getting.
Yeah.
And then you have this, the Democrats have this disdain for anybody who works in rural America or anybody that works with their hands. There's this adage out there.
One, because they're not cutting their grass, John.
But if you didn't go to college, you're not as smart as somebody who did. So my question is, I would throw it back, and this is on both Republicans and Democrats. Let's look where our country is now economically. We're $34 trillion in debt and growing fast at a record clip. You're the geniuses that said inflation was transitory. Now it's permanent. You're the geniuses that sent us off into 5 wars. We haven't won anything since World War II. Now, Trump said a lot of things that are very crude, but he was correct.
Okay, for the run for the first administration, he's been kind of tame.
No, but even lately, when he
he's
said,
been tame.
okay, when he said, hey, Russia, if you want to go into those NATO countries that aren't fulfilling their defense obligations, hey, go for it.
I mean, he's making a very good point.
But what the point,
basically, in a not so mob mentality, we're kind of like protecting all these other countries from Russia. That's the big, and then, but you said it last week too, when Germany is getting their energy from Russia, but they want us to protect us from Russia.
Oh yeah, and that's the point Trump made in 2018 and 2000.
You want us to protect, you pay up.
But that also goes back to another future president who the Democrats champion as one of their heroes was John Kennedy. In December of 1962 and January 1963, he called out Europe saying, hey, Europe, you need to do more for your own defense. Can't keep relying on America. And Trump was saying, you want us to protect you from Russia, but yet you sign these lucrative energy deals. And then Germany is non-deployable. And in military terms, if we ever got into a conflict, we can only use German air bases because their military is a shell of itself. Yeah. They're not going to be up to 2% until 2033.
For a reason.
There's a reason, but if you want us to do all the work, we're expending all this money, and then you sign lucrative energy contracts with the very country you want us to protect you from. And maybe things might have been different and Russia didn't have the money to spend on its military, so they would have gone into Ukraine. That could have changed the whole calculation of Vladimir Putin. We don't know. But this all goes back to the change. And then you see other ethnic groups like Hispanic Americans. They have this, they're more evangelical because they're primarily Catholic and other Christian denominations. And what is being pushed? Transgender, the LGBTQ. They're very strong Christians.
Yeah.
And then you look at Asian Americans. In San Francisco, they had a recall of 3 school board members because they were pushing this radical agenda where one high school, Lowell High School, you have to take a test to get in. And they was like, well, let's get rid of it. We're going to go to a lottery system. I go, wait a minute. My kids study, so my kids are being punished. And when they recalled these 3 school board members, the reaction from one of the recalled members was, oh, Asian Americans are akin to white supremacists. Really? Mm-hmm. So you start to see, then you look at Jewish Americans. Because of October 7th, they're seeing the rampant anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party. So you're starting to see this coalescing. They may not all go 80% for Republicans, but you're starting to see they're not still adamant with the Democratic Party. So this is where the change. Now we'll have to see come November how this plays out.
Yeah. All right, John. Well, why don't you let them know how they can get a hold of us?
You can get a hold of us by going to ubaldireports@gmail.com. That's ubaldireports@gmail.com. You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and definitely TikTok. We appreciate all the questions and comments. We just try to keep it live. We want to do this every day, so give us time. We're going to try to get to that point, so hopefully soon. But before I close, let me turn the time over to Joe. Joe will talk about what All American Gunslingers is about.
Okay. So we'll get our county paperwork eventually. We'll also. There's a lot of eventuallys going on here, but
But that's what businesses go through.
We'll
It's
get our
not
website
easy.
up and running eventually. But you can get a hold of us on all things All American Gunslingers. And you can get a hold of us, email us at allamericangunslingers@gmail.com. We are kind of in the final stages, please God, of opening. So once we get the appropriate paperwork, we should be opening up very, very soon. And we'll keep you posted. So with that, everybody have a great day.
Yeah, have a good evening. Until next Wednesday at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Keep